Welcome to my YouTube channel. To all my returning subscribers, you guys are awesome. If you are visiting my channel for the first time, please hit the subscribe button, like this video, strike the bell notification so that you get alerted as soon as I post any new content. Last week, I discussed the cybersecurity concepts. I hope you learned something new. This week, I'm going to be talking about something equally important, and that is going to be identity and access management, or IAM. I'm going to be focusing specifically on Microsoft's IAM solution, which is the Entra ID. We are going to be diving deep into the console. We are going to have some hands-on, so please sit back, relax, and enjoy this video. I'll drop all that needs to be dropped in the description below. Go ahead and comment and ask questions if you've got any. I'll be doing my best to answer whatever questions you are going to be dropping there. So once again, sit back, relax, and enjoy this video. Thank you as you do so. So in this week's video, we are going to be talking about IAM, which is a short for Identity and Access Management. So how are we going to be proceeding? We are going to be defining what IAM is. We'll look at the components of IAM. We'll look at the different authentication factors. We'll explain why we need an IAM in the first place, and we'll talk about Microsoft Entra ID. So let's get started with what IAM is. IAM is short for Identity and Access Management, and it is a framework of policies and technologies that ensure the proper access of resources to authorized entities. An entity is an object that can be identified by a unique identifier, such as a username, an email address, or a device ID. Entities can represent people, devices, services, or groups of any of these. A principal is an entity that can perform actions on other entities or resources. Principals can be authenticated when they are verified or unauthenticated when they are anonymous. For example, a user who logs in with a password is an authenticated principal, while a visitor who browses a public website is an unauthenticated principal. A policy is a set of rules defining what actions a principal can or cannot perform on a specific entity or resource. Policies can be based on attributes of the principal, the entity, the resource, or the context of the request. For example, a policy can allow a user to access a file only if they belong to a certain group and only during business hours. So moving on, let's look at the different aspects of IAM. Well, IAM consists of four aspects, namely identification, authentication, authorization, and accounting. We'll start with the first one, which is identification. Now, identification is the process of verifying the identity of the user or a device that requests access to a resource or a service. It can be done by using various methods such as usernames, passwords, certificates, tokens, or biometrics. Authentication, on the other hand, is the process of validating that the user or the device is who they claim to be. It can be done by using one or more factors such as something the user knows, for example, a password, something the user has, for example, a token, or something that the user is, for example, a fingerprint. Authorization is the process of determining what level of access that the user or the device has to a resource or a service. Authorization can be done by using various mechanisms such as roles, permissions, policies, and rules. Auditing or accounting, on the other hand, is the process of recording and reviewing the activities and events related to identification, authentication, and authorization. It can be done using various tools such as logs, reports, and alerts, and it can help to ensure compliance, accountability, and security within an organization. So next, we are going to be looking at the authentication factors. Now, authentication factors are the pieces of information or evidence that are used to verify the identity of a user or a device. And there are three main types of authentication factors. That is something you know, something you have, or something that you are. So something you know authentication is based on something that the user knows, such as a password or a PIN or personal identification number. It could also be a security question or a passphrase. This type of authentication is the most common and easiest to implement, but also the most vulnerable to attacks such as phishing, brute force, or guessing. Then that takes us to the next kind of authentication factor, which is something you have. Something you have authentication is based on something that the user possesses, such as a physical token, a smart card, a mobile phone, or a biometric device. This type of authentication is more secure than something you know authentication, but it's also more costly and more complex to deploy and maintain. It also requires the user to carry the device or the token with them all the time. Going to the third kind of authentication, which is something you are authentication. Now, this is based on something that the user is, such as a fingerprint, a face scan, or a voice recognition. This type of authentication is the most secure and convenient for the user, but it's also the most challenging to implement and verify. It also raises privacy and ethical concerns about the collection and the storage of biometric information. So the next point is, why do we even need an IAM? Well, in a modern workplace, hybrid work is the new normal for many organizations, and of course, this poses lots of challenges for ensuring secure and reliable access to companies' resources. Previously, most employees worked on site, which was usually in the office. They could connect to all of the company's resources and they could access all of the apps, the files, and the data that they needed. However, nowadays, employees can work from anywhere and they need a way to access company resources without compromising security or compromising performance. That's why organizations will need to adopt a modern approach to network security and management that will be able to support different kinds of hybrid work scenarios. Organizations will typically be doing this through the use of identity and access management or IAM solutions. And they'll be doing this to ensure the security and the integrity of their data and their operations. So the IT department would therefore require a mechanism to regulate access of different users and entities. And then IAM is going to be ensuring that the resources such as emails, databases, data, and applications will be securely accessed by verified entities. And of course, they'll be doing so with minimal disruptions. Now, the aim here would be to control access so that authorized people can perform their tasks. And of course, unauthorized people like hackers will not be allowed entry into the environment. Therefore, IAM is a very important part of modern IT because it ensures secure access for various users such as employees, contractors, vendors, business partners, and even personal device users. It will be verifying the identity and permission of each user every time they access a resource. In this way, IAM is going to prevent unauthorized or inappropriate access and is going to enhance the security of organizations. It will also allow the organization to manage access levels and permissions efficiently and securely. So, which of the IAM solutions are we going to be focusing on? Well, we are going to be focusing on, for the purposes of this video, on the Microsoft Entra ID IAM solution, which is a classic example of a robust IAM solution offering groundbreaking ways to create and manage different kinds of digital identities. It uses blockchain technologies and uses biometric authentication to give each user a unique and a verifiable identity. So users can decide how to share their data, how to access different services and different applications, and of course, safeguard their privacy and security online. So Microsoft Entra ID is built to work with existing standards and protocols, such as OpenID Connect, sovereign identity, and decentralized identifiers. It also connects with Microsoft Azure, Microsoft 365, and other Microsoft products and services. So it is not just an identity solution, it is basically a mission to create a more fair, open, and reliable digital world. So in the next part of this video, we are going to be diving deep into the Microsoft Entra ID solutions. We are going to be demonstrating how we can create different kinds of identities and some of the features and attributes that these identities need to have to enhance better security. So please stay tuned as we move on to the next aspect of this video, which will be going into the Microsoft Entra ID console. So we are in Microsoft Entra ID, and Microsoft Entra is a comprehensive solution for managing the identities and the access of your digital resources. That's the URL there to get to Microsoft Entra. It is entra.microsoft.com. And Microsoft Entra allows you to create and manage users, groups, devices, roles, applications, and admins within a cloud-based environment. It also helps you to monitor and optimize your billing and settings in order to suit your preferences and needs. So you can also implement things like identity governance and external identities to improve your security posture and your compliance posture. It does that also while delivering a user-friendly experience, making it easy to manage your digital identities and your access rights. So Microsoft Entra, as we can see here within the console, has got some categories. We can see we've got the identity category, we have the protection category, we have identity governance, we have the verified ID, we've got permissions management, and then we have secure, global secure access, which is currently in preview. So if we zoom in on the identity category for just 1 minute, we can see that we've got a lot of subcategories within the identity category here. We can see we've got an overview. If we go to the overviews page, we can see a lot of things there. Apart from the overview, we have users, that allows us to create users and groups. But first, the overview page gives us a kind of dashboard of all of our identity health and activities. It gives us tools that we can use to manage users. So straight here from the overview page, we can do lots of things. We can add users, groups, enterprise applications, and app registration as well. We can see some metrics from the overview page, such as things like risky sign-ins. We can see it gives us the number of global administrators, secure score for identity. It gives us a lot of at a glance information. It gives us some reporting and alerts as well, allowing us to monitor and troubleshoot issues. So we also have other subcategories here, such as the user area, where we can do a lot of things, allowing us to create, update, delete, and restore users within our organization. We could also assign roles from the user area. We can assign licenses and policies to users. We can reset their passwords. We can manage their devices, all from the user subcategory. Another area here is where we can do group management. So from the group area, we can create, update, delete, and restore groups in our organization. We can also assign roles. We can assign licenses and policies to groups. We could also manage membership of groups from the group area there. So the next category here we've got is the devices. The devices allows us to, straight from the overview tool, we can do lots of things. We can register, enroll, manage, and secure devices that access our organization's resources. We could also apply policies and settings to devices, as well as wipe or retire these devices if there is need. So those are some of the categories we have, in addition to the subcategories, I beg your pardon, in addition to applications, protection, identity governance, and external identities. For example, under protection, it gives us a dashboard that shows the security posture and risk level of our identity environment. So if we go right there, it gives us currently not much here because this is a fresh, it's a fresh tenant. So it gives us things like metrics to see identity protection metrics, conditional access, privileged identity management, identity governance. We could also access tools and recommendations that help us to improve our security and compliance. So we have lots of lots of things we can do within the Entra ID environment. But for the purposes of what we are going to be doing today, I'm going to be focusing on the identity area. So within the identity area, like I said, we've got the overview page that gives us, well, at a glance, information of our tenant. We can see our tenant name and ID. We can see our primary domain. Of course, we could also see the license that we have. That currently shows that we have a Microsoft Entra ID P2 license, giving us the breakdown of users, of groups, of applications, and of devices right here. So what we are going to be focusing on will be how to create some of the objects within Entra ID. Specifically, we want to create a user. So to create a user, we have to be in the All Users page. And from the All Users page, we'll just click on this plus sign here, and it gives us two options. We can create a user. Creating a new user within our environment is one way. The other way is we can invite an external user to collaborate within our organization. But we are going to be choosing the first option. So I'll go ahead and click on create new user. So I'll click on that, and that takes us to another page here, the basics tab, where we could just fill in some of the basic information such as the name and the user principal name. So I'm going to just fill in the name and the first initial, that's John D. And then for the display name, I can now put in the first name and the last name. So I'll type in the first name, and then I'll type in the last name, and it gives us the option to auto-generate the password. But of course, if we uncheck this option, what that means is we have to now fit in the password by ourselves. I'll just go ahead and leave that box checked, and it auto-generates the password for us. And then we have the option here to ensure the account is enabled or disabled by just a checkbox. So I want to keep the account enabled. So moving on to the next tab, we have the option of either clicking the tab or clicking the next button here. I'm going to go ahead and click the next button, and that takes us to the properties page. So we can go ahead and populate some more information. Like for example, I'm going to type the person's name, in this case, John, and of course, and then we have the type of user. If we click on the drop down here, we see we either have the option of creating the user type of member or the user type of guest. I want to stay with member. And then we have other information that would typically be useful for us within a human resources environment, such as maybe the job title. So I'll go ahead and assign a help desk. And the company name and all the departments you can also populate, and the employee ID and those kinds of things that will uniquely identify the employee are some of the things that we can populate. So I'll go to the assignments tab, and from within the assignments tab, I can add a group and I can also add a role. So I'll go ahead and add a group. I want to click on add group, and I want to add the user to the security group called IT. So I'll go ahead and click on SG-IT to add the user to the group. But again, you've got to also take note that you can add a user to the group at the end of the user creation process, not necessarily while you are creating the user. So you can add the user to whatever group after you've created the user, but in this case, I'm taking the step to add the user to the group while I'm creating the user. You could also assign roles to the user. This time around, I want to assign the appropriate role for the person's job title, which is the help desk administrator. You also have to bear in mind that when you are adding users to a group, you have to bear in mind the zero trust principle that we discussed in the previous video. If you want to get the details about that, you go to the video and go ahead and see some of the things we discussed. And I'm going to drop the link to that video in the description. But basically, what we need to point out is that we want to give users just enough access that is giving them all what they require to the minimum they require to be able to perform their day-to-day task, rather than giving them everything in one go. So I want to add the user to this role here, meaning that user can reset passwords for non-administrators and help desk administrators. And then I go ahead and click on select. So we've added the user to a group and we've added a role to the user. The next screen is going to take us to a review of all of what we have done for the user. And if we are happy with it, we can go ahead and create. But if we are not happy with it, we can go back to any of the tabs and make the appropriate corrections before we come and finally create the user. So I'm happy with what I've done so far. I want to go ahead and click on create to create the user. So I'll hit on the create button and we can see that the user has been successfully created. So let's go and view the user. To view a user, you have the option of searching for the username from here. And of course, we can see that the user appears in the search, which I can go ahead and click on. So that's the user, and we can see the date the user has been created and all of the details of the user. We can see the user is currently enabled. The user has not. We can see the details about the sign in for the user, and all of this information is happening on the overview page of Entra ID right here for this particular user. So we have the option to edit the properties. We can delete the user. We can reset the passwords. We can do a lot of things. One thing I want to draw our attention to is how to add licenses. So I'll go ahead and click on the licenses tab. And as you can see, since we created this user for the very first time, there has been no license assigned to the user. But of course, the user will be needing some licenses to be performing day-to-day tasks. So I want to go ahead and make an assignment for a license. I'm going to click on the licenses. And we have lots of options here. We've got the Enterprise Mobility plus Security E5, the Office 365 E5, and we have all of those kinds of licenses right here. So I want to go ahead and assign the user to one of the appropriate licenses here, and we can see that there are lots of options that is associated with the license that I'm assigning to the user. And we also have the option of removing if we feel that the user does not need certain features of Office 365 E5. We can go ahead and remove by checking or unchecking from the boxes like we see here. So, but I'm happy with everything that is going on so far. I want to go ahead and assign all of those licenses to the user because the user requires them for work. So we'll go ahead and save. And it tells me that the license failed for the user. So sometimes when that happens, you want to go ahead and look at the reason. There are not enough licenses available for this user. So you want to purchase more licenses. You can actually see the detail. You have purchased more licenses or remove licenses from users and groups who do not need them. So this is a situation that has occurred when all of the licenses that we have has run out. So you want to take note of that. One of the things you want to do is you want to manage your licenses appropriately so that things like this do not happen. But let's go ahead and see a user that already has licenses assigned so we can see how all of that works. So let's go ahead and pick on one of the users that were pre-created for this demo. And if we go ahead and look at the licenses, we can see already here that we have those licenses assigned to the user, like we can see here. So we see this one is 10 of 10 available, but this one is 35, 54 or 56. What that means is, in this case, there are 54 licenses that have been used when we have 56 licenses. So if you want to get the John Doe user to have a license, then you want to maybe come and remove the license from a user that does not need it to be able to assign the license to the John Doe user. So that's how that is done. So another thing we can do within the Entra ID again is to we can go ahead and delete a user. So I'll go ahead and click on all users, and then I'll search for that user I just created, which is John. And then we can just highlight, select the user, and there are lots of things we can do here. Now, why would we want to delete users? When users join our organization as a normal part of the employment process, there are people called joiners, there are people called leavers. The leavers are those that do not want to work with the organization anymore, or have been asked to leave the organization for one reason or the other. Now, in this situation, one of the things you want to do as a security person is you want to be reviewing all of this and be working with the HR department to be sure that everyone that is available within your directory is still an employee. And then if the person is no longer an employee, you want to go ahead and delete their user account. So to delete their user account, you select the user and then go ahead and click on delete, and it prompts you, do you want to delete the selected user? I want to click on OK, and it tells us that the user has been successfully deleted. So if I go ahead and do a refresh here, we'll see that John Doe is no longer available in the all users page right here. But the point is, supposing we made a mistake and we deleted a given user by mistake. Maybe I meant to delete Brian Johnson, but I mistakenly deleted John Doe. Is there any way to be able to correct that problem? The answer to the question is yes. So we'll go to deleted users, and then we are going to see a list of all of the users that we have deleted. So to be able to restore this user back, we want to click on the user, and then we want to go ahead and click on restore user, and it prompts you, do you want to restore the user? The answer to the question is yes, I do, because I deleted the user by mistake. So I want to click on OK, and if I click on OK, it tells me that the user has been successfully restored, and then I will now be able to find the user within the all users page. So if I go ahead and click on it, we can see, we should be able to see the user now available on that page. So we can see now the user is now available. So we have restored the user, and then the user can continue to work as they were doing before the deletion. So apart from creating users, we could also have groups in Entra. So looking at the group subcategory within the identity category, we can create different kinds of groups. So just like we created users, we could also create groups. So I want to go ahead and click on a new group, and we see here that we have group types as one of the compulsory fields that we have to populate. And by default, we have a security group. But if we click on the drop down, we see that we have another kind of group, which is the Microsoft 365 group. So the question is, what is the difference between a security group and a Microsoft 365 group? Basically, security groups are used for permission assignment. So rather than, like you saw when I was creating the John user, rather than assigning permissions or roles on an individual basis, which can, as you can imagine, can be pretty tedious depending on the volume of users that you've got. You can rather assign these permissions or roles to the group and just add users that need those levels of permissions to this group. So once they are members of the group, they will inherit the permission for the group. And that's one of the reasons why we will create security groups. The other group type is the Microsoft 365 group. Now, Microsoft 365 groups are convenient ways that we can use to work with a team of people on various tasks and projects. It allows us to share things like common Outlook inboxes, calendars, and document libraries with our team members without having to assign these permissions manually. And these groups also replace the old distribution list and shared mailboxes, giving us a more modern and collaborative experience. So I'll go and this time around, I want to create a Microsoft 365 group. And then you have to give the group a name. Now, the group name is important because you can see here that after the group type and group name, we have a red asterisk there. And that asterisk means that you've got to supply those parameters or the process of group creation will not continue. So I want to give the group a name. I'll call it, maybe I'll call it IT administrators, for example. And the group email address is also IT_administrators at my domain name here. So you can give the group a description. Now we can see here that while the group description is not compulsory, it is a recommended thing because you are going to be doing some kind of self-documentation. So I usually would recommend that you add a description to your group so that if someone is coming to take a look at your group from the description, they have a very good idea of what you of why you have created the group. So I'll give it a description. Okay, so we have a description, and then we have another important thing that we need to talk about, which is the membership type. Now there are two options for membership type. The first one is assigned. Now what that means is that if I've created the group will be empty. I have to now go and add people to the group. Okay, I have to go and add users to the group. But the other one, which is the dynamic user, you have to go ahead and now create some conditions that if the users that you've created meet those conditions, they will be dynamically added to the group. So I'll go ahead and select dynamic user as the group type right here. So I'll go ahead and click on that. And now we have the option of specifying owners. Now an owner is the one, well, responsible for the upkeep of the group. Will be able to do lots of things, do some kind of administration within the group. So I want to go ahead and select an owner for the group. And since John Doe is is a help desk administrator, I'll go ahead and make him the group owner. So I'll go ahead and select John, and then I'll go ahead and click on select, and he's now, we can see we have one owner there. Now, since this is a dynamic user group, we need to now do one more thing to get our group to be active. So we want to go ahead and add a dynamic query. So I'll click on add dynamic query, and it pops up the dynamic membership rules page. So where we can configure rules and we have the option to validate the rules. So first of all, I want to specify my first property. So I'll click on choose property here, and I want to say the account for whosoever wants to be in the group must have a value equals to true. So in this case, account enabled will have a value equals to true. Now I could also add another expression. I could say department for the person equals IT. and I can add as many parameters as I want. So once I click on the rule syntax box here, we can see that the rule syntax is generated for us. So that means user dot account enabled equals true and user dot department equals IT. So these are this rule syntax is generated, and all I have to do is to go ahead and save, and we've created the query. Of course, the next thing we want to do is to go ahead and click on create, and the process of our group creation is underway. So the group now will be listed amongst one of the groups that we've created, and all we need to do to ensure that users are part of that group is to ensure that the attributes that we've selected or we've defined within our dynamics group membership query should be what we will assign to the users for the users to be members of that group. So this is all we are going to be talking about for today. In our next video, we are going to be talking about something equally interesting. So stay tuned and of course keep a date with us. Thank you for your time, and don't forget to like this video and subscribe to the channel so that you can get notified whenever we have a new video. Bye for now.